Hey everyone, we are Kairos Copychats. Thank you so much for tuning in today.
Today's episode will be an interview where we ask our guests about their experience with faith and how it's impacted them.
We believe that everyone's story is powerful and needs to be heard, no matter their background.
We're looking forward to knowing more about our guests and hearing what they have to say, and we hope you're excited to hear from them as well.
So buckle up and let's listen in. What's going on, guys? My name is Ryan,
I'm Jared.
and we are Kairos Copychats.
This podcast exists as a safe space for you to bring your questions and rethink faith so that you can encounter Jesus personally.
Sir,
I'm excited because we not only have another interviewee, but of all the people we've had so far, it's like we either both know them or it's someone I've gotten to know through Ryan. This is the first time I get to introduce one of my friends, or started off as one of my friends, to Ryan. So, and I love when my friends meet. So without further ado, we got the man, Peter Varberg, my guy. This guy, he's an absolute legend. I'm so excited for him to be here. Yes, I'm so happy. He's been, God, when did I meet you? 2016-ish?
Somewhere around there.
I like lump a lot of people into just like that year.
15, 16. Yeah. Something.
Yeah, we met at a college ministry at my old church, and low-key, I don't remember the first time we met. I kind of...
It was
the
at a
consensus.
worship night at Rock City Heights.
Yeah, that's what it was. Thank you. Okay, that was actually bugging me for a little bit. I was like, how do I not remember? This is kind of annoying. But yes, I'm so happy to hear what you have to say and to introduce you to another friend of mine. This is gonna be a good day.
a pleasure to meet you, Peter.
Looking forward to this.
Yeah.
But first off, we have our icebreaker as per usual. So, what did your guys' Spotify Wrapped look like? Who are your top artists? These are important questions.
I am not going first.
Not going first? All right. Would you like to go first?
Sure.
Let's go.
It was funny. I'm glad that he told me in advance because I hadn't looked at these.
I was so
noticing
excited.
it.
I'm like so excited to see it. I was like, I thought it came out in like November, and it like I was like waiting for it each day.
Yeah, I've been seeing people post, and I'm like, oh, I need to do that, but life's been a little crazy. So top 3. Is that what we're doing?
Sure. If you already got if you know all 5, go for it. But
I mean,
whatever you're
I don't
looking
know.
at it. So
Spotify knows all 5. So my number 1 is a song called Bloom. It's by the Paper Kites. It is a love song. I really like it.
Romantic. I like it.
Okay.
Yes. Then Noah Khan, All My Love. I found out about him last December.
Okay.
On our family vacation to Hawaii. And he's like a fun little... I play him at the gym or on road trips.
That's your gym music. All right.
Well, 1 or 2 times.
Usually
Usually it's podcasts.
There's a couple. Oh, okay. You're a podcast in the gym kind of guy. Got it.
Yes. Number 3 is the song that my fiance introduced me to called Dancing in the Minefields by Andrew Peterson.
Dancing in the minefields.
But yeah, it's really
Wow.
profound Christian song about marriage. So
Huh.
I really like it.
Oh.
I gotta check that one out. That sounds very interesting, that title.
Yeah.
Huh.
So yeah, it just talks about how love can be like a minefield. And
Oh gosh.
Oh God.
yeah,
Fair enough.
It just talks about how challenging it is.
Yeah.
and learning to dance in it instead of being afraid of.
Wow.
For sure.
Huh. I
I was
kinda
wondering
like
where that title was gonna go. I wasn't ready for that. That's good though.
I mainly thought of like a video game. Totally not in the
Of course.
ballpark.
Okay, now we got to go to yours because
Oh my
that comment will make sense.
Yeah, I was listening to play some of those over there. I'm excited to hear these.
Oh man. Okay. I remember like putting it out on Spotify and people like reacting to it. Sorry, I posted it on Instagram and people reacted to it when I put it out. Mm-hmm. My top artist is Sega, as in Sonic the Hedgehog.
My guy just listens to Sonic OSTs.
Is it like
and music?
the little coins or what is it?
Sometimes the sound effects are in there, but legit, it's literally just music from the games.
Yeah.
Oh,
All of
it's
it.
fun.
Every time I'm in his car, it's either that.
That's a good
or
idea.
Yeah, because for me, especially if I'm falling asleep, I need like all like the music that I listen to like during the games to make me feel like I'm going fast, and I need the adrenaline. So that's soundtracks. I don't know. Like,
legit, yeah. It's like
The last game
it's
that
like
came
crack
out-
for your ears.
for real. The last
It's
game that came
designed
out.
to like go around action. So
Yeah, it's like super
You're
fast
driving
paced. Yeah. Dude's turning into the guy from Baby Driver over here.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I mean, the last game that came out, Sonic Frontiers, all my favorite songs were from there, and so
I need to play that one.
yeah, it's so good. But my second artist is Porter Robinson. He came out with a new album this year. EDM guy. I used to love listening to him through college. This new album felt a little bit different than the previous ones, but that's okay. I saw him with my wife actually a few months ago,
Yeah.
live again. Yeah, second time seeing him. I loved it as always. And then my third one was an anime artist, Tomoya Otani.
What does he make? Which anime?
I forget which song it was. I want to say it was the theme song for one of the JJK theme songs.
Was it the first one from the How Is Your Blue or How's My Blue or something like that?
I think it's Where My Blue Is.
Where My Blue Is. Thank
Something
you.
like that? Yeah.
I knew Blue was in there.
I think that's my third one.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I replayed that song quite a few times. A lot.
Yeah.
That's
same.
me.
I feel like after this, we just get a text troop going and share those top three.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
wanna listen to
You can do multiple people
the
on a
Sega.
blend, right? Like this the
Well, I'm just saying like low tech. Shoot me a link in an iMessage. I don't need any like blend. I don't even know what that is.
Okay.
Just text me the link in an iMessage.
All right,
Bet.
I'm down for that.
I'll
Always
just click play while I'm driving.
Let's do it.
All right, we all gotta drive home, so we're just gonna spam each other after this. All right, so me, I had. So it's funny. You did songs, you did artists. I guess I'll do artists. I did. So this guy, he's a rapper. His name's Aha Gazelle, and he's been my top since like 2018, like every year without fail. Just I'm faithful like that. Dude just puts out good music. Why would I not listen to it? So that was one. The second one was actually an EDM guy as well. His name's Matthew Parker, and he's also a Christian artist, and he just puts out fire stuff. And he was doing it like 1 or 2 songs a month this year, and then like an album, and then like more songs. So it was just like constantly coming, which is great. It was just good stuff. And then third was another Christian rapper, Mike Teasy, who same deal. Just they're all just hype. I need bass in my music. I want to feel it in my chest. I want to feel it reverb throughout my whole body.
He used to be me too.
Yeah. So
I mean, EDM.
Yeah.
exactly. So that's
how
like
it
rap,
is.
EDM, rap. Yeah, that's my top. But funny enough, my top song was an anime opening. Which if I played it, I will
course.
send it to you guys. If I played it, you will understand why it's on my pumped up playlist.
Yeah.
That is that was my gym song for sure.
Fair enough.
Oh man. Well, now that we got to know each other's song preferences, let's get to know some more about you, Peter.
Yeah, I'm curious to know. Obviously, this is our first time meeting, but yeah, I'm curious to hear a little bit about your story, and yeah, let's start with what was life like for you growing up in your community? Where are you from? Do you have siblings, etc.? How was family life?
Yeah, Peter, where are you from?
Clearly, I'm from the Philippines. No, yeah, I am. But yeah, so life was a little different growing up, as I could be the poster child of white privilege by my face. But based on my background, yeah, I born and raised in the Philippines.
Wow.
Older brother. My younger sister's like 7 years younger than me, so for a little while it was just me and my brother.
Wow.
But yeah, there's a lot of, if you've ever studied like third culture kids, a lot of that don't really have a good concept of home. You know, didn't feel at home in the Philippines, didn't feel at home in America. Everyone wants to be known and fit in. And I even wanted to dye my hair black so I could, play tag better. Or
God, I cannot see
hide
you
and
with
seek.
black hair.
It's like,
What?
I just, I felt out of place. And
Yeah.
yeah, it was, it's interesting because there's a lot of reactions. My brother's response was very different. He really enjoyed the attention he got for being American in the Philippines. I really didn't enjoy the attention. I was always trying to hide, be more invisible. Made me very shy as a kid. So
Interesting.
that was a lot of we would go out to more rural areas. And if you just think about it, you watch TV, you see Americans on TV, and there's people we'd run into all the time that we were the only white kids they'd ever seen in real life. So, like my dad would park the car and then go in to talk to some pastor. And then we'd sit in the car and the kids from the barangay would come around and just watch us.
Just look at you in the people tank.
Yeah. So again, it's a different experience. I would have done the same thing as a kid when I was in America. You wouldn't want to see me at an airport. You'd be very embarrassed because I had tall people, obese people, black people. You don't see those in the Philippines. So anytime I'd see, I would just be pointing. Oh, look, Mom. Or someone in the little scooter, and I'm like, whoa. It's just innocent, childlike behavior where you've never seen anyone like that.
So
and
interesting.
So it was the same thing that happened to me. But
That's so
yeah,
interesting.
it caused a very interesting childhood trying to fit in.
Yeah, totally.
It's so funny you mention that because it's something just you don't think about growing up in the States. It's just oh, diversity. Duh, of course, there's different people.
You got to think about most other countries
Aren't this.
They're most 90% of people
Yeah.
there. We would in high school in Manila, the capital city, which had a lot more white people. Where I grew up in Tacloban, it was a relatively bigger city comparatively to the area around it, but nothing like Manila. But even in Manila, when we would go to the malls in high school, we would play a game where we would count. We got points for how many white people we found. So we would claim them. We would do this it's
It's that game when you see a slug bug. Punch buggy.
So
you're doing it for white people.
Yeah.
My school in Manila was an international missionary school, so we had kids from Korea, South Africa, Australia, America.
None of those counted. You were looking for the white people, though, for the game.
Well, you don't really know. You can pick out Americans pretty easy overseas, but for us, that was just a fun game we played.
Yeah.
When we saw white people.
I remember the first time, or a couple of times, when I started going outside of the States.
Yeah.
I remember I was in Peru one time, and a buddy of mine, he went to a grocery store or a bank or something, and I was just waiting out on the sidewalk, because it was kind of just a small, intimate space. And I remember just looking around, just been in another country, blah, 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 and I'm not only did I not look like anybody else, I'm 6'4", I'm black, and I'm in Peru.
Yeah, but fro.
And the fro. Literally, I don't blend in. There's no crowd of people that I will ever blend in with, honestly.
Especially in Japan, you did not.
Yeah, Japan was another one. It was the same thing where it's and I was in Peru on the sidewalk, and I realized as I'm looking around, I'm I can see clear down this street over everyone's head. Just no one is obstructing my view. Everyone's chest height.
My dad's 6'3", so it was easy to not get lost in the department store. You just kind of look up. There he is.
There he is.
That's convenient.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
So you mentioned, part of why you were in the Philippines was your folks were missionaries.
Missionary parents.
Okay.
So you think about it, it's just there's a different pressure when you're a pastor's kid, missionary kid. There's a lot of, my parents' ministry kind of relies a bit on our reputation. And, so there's the expectations as a kid that people everywhere I went in the city knew who I was because I'm Pastor Paul's kid.
So you're kind of under a microscope almost?
Yeah.
Or just okay.
So that was a bit of the stuff I've had to process through later on in life. There's not really much way to avoid it, but
Right.
it comes with the territory. you're perceived differently because like the witness of your parents' ministry.
Yeah.
People put all their expectations on other people. So
It's something to process, but it's also like you didn't ask for it, or
Yeah,
something that was just kind of thrust upon you.
Yeah.
Did it like did that ever come in your mind or like affect you?
yeah, I mean, growing up as a missionary kid, there were plenty of other missionary kids that,
Right.
were mad at their parents.
Yeah.
Like, why didn't I get? I think a lot of times those were kids that might have been like grew up in America and then got pulled away from their friends and relationships and thrown to some random overseas place where they didn't feel like they could make friends. But for me, it's like I was born and raised there, so I didn't really know any different. Obviously, if you think about being self-conscious, I was very self-conscious,
Oh.
That makes sense.
but
So with you being a missionary kid and everything, what did your personal faith journey look like? Was it just like kind of obviously it seems you grew up in that kind of environment.
yeah, I knew about Jesus and God very early on. My dad actually kind of walked me through, I was like 6 or 7 when he like actually asked. He has this whole series of questions that he uses often, but to like help me just process, do I really know or have a relationship with the Lord? And so that's when I accepted the Lord when I was 7, second grade or something.
That's
7 years
early.
old.
All right.
And I got it to the degree of God as my savior, like save me from hell, that type of understanding. I don't think I got him as my Lord until later. So at like 7th grade or 12 years old is when I went to Manila to go to an international school. So my parents were 400 miles away. So I went home 4 times a year and lived in a dorm. So it wasn't like a boarding school in the way that you might understand here, where it's like usually boarding schools are like military or all guys or all girls. This was like a normal school, and then it had like 5 dorms. So maybe each dorm had like 15, 20 kids. So around
Tiny.
like 70 to, it was like a family. So you had dorm parents that were usually missionaries that their whole role was being like the parent figure for kids in the dorm. And usually it was like 3 to 4 kids in a room, big 5-bedroom type house, 3-story with a basement with the computers for homework and video games. And the middle floor usually had like the dorm parents' apartment area, and
Their
then the
quarters.
kitchen and like the dining room and living room. So yeah, 7th grade through senior year, except for 11th grade that I was in the States, I was going to Faith Academy. So I think I don't know if it's still known as the largest missionary school in the world, but at the time it was. And so that was when I definitely had to have a more personal faith, because I wasn't relying on my parents anymore. And each year the dorm parents, went to whatever church the dorm parents would take us to, and it was a Christian school, so we had Bible classes and chapel services and activities. So it was really not till my sophomore year in high school that some friend of mine was like, hey, or she was celebrating like her spiritual birthday. And I was like, interesting. And I asked her about it, and she was like, yeah, this was when I sacrificed my life to God. And I didn't really ever heard anyone say that before. And hearing her talk about it was more of like her decision. She got saved as a kid, missionary kid like me, but she kind of recommitted her life in the sense that like my life is no longer my own. I'm fully sacrificed, living as a living sacrifice to the Lord. So I do remember having kind of walked up on campus and found a spot, had like a prayer time, and kind of went through that decision of like, you know what, I'm not living for myself anymore. And so that was a big step in my faith in my young years.
Wow, it's like I'm honestly just hearing all of this, like you have from such an early age, like throughout your whole life, you have God in almost every aspect of school, home,
Yeah.
second home, just like there. And outside looking in, it looks like you never got like burnt out or like you like continued pressing in, like you said, like okay, you wanted to understand what it looked like your life being a sacrifice for Him. It wasn't like, oh, this is so much of just the same thing as like people who walk away from the faith after like being raised in church and like that didn't happen. Like that's,
I mean, I have a lot of friends from my high school classmates, atheists, doing some things with their life and career that I wouldn't want to mention on this podcast. But yeah, it's like close friends of mine I grew up with. So I've always wrestled with that. And then I went to Point Loma Nazarene here in San Diego, which was
for college.
Yeah, for college.
Okay.
Which was a surprise to me. I was like, I thought everyone was coming here for the same reason. And I realized, oh, people are here to serve, or people just had wealthy parents that were Christians that were like, hopefully this will take care of my child. And so, yeah, nothing against Point Loma. I imagine most people that went to private Christian universities had somewhat of a similar experience. But yeah, after college, I went through a sort of a emotional intelligence kind of like leadership course up in LA, and that was the first time I really got introduced to a high number of people that had zero Christian background, and that was very different for me. You know, like people that were very spiritual but not at all Christian, people with zero Christian background. Like if you think about my life, it's like growing up, and again, even in the Philippines, my parents are missionaries, but the Philippines is such a Catholic country that divorce is illegal. You literally cannot get a divorce. So again, it's not quite having a personal relationship with the Lord. It's not, what we would understand evangelical Christianity to be, but talking about Jesus, talking about the Bible, totally normal there. It's not, everyone.
It's not a divisive topic. That. Like it could
until
be else.
You might invite them to church. So in Filipino culture, it's very like the family thing. It's a cultural thing, and a lot of people that would go to my parents' church. There's plenty of people that got sort of excommunicated from their family. They call it converted to Protestant. So
that tracks, because my wife is Filipino. Her parents aren't necessarily like this, but people in her church here in San Diego, which is primarily Filipino, like from
the Philippines,
the Philippines, which
is not most Filipinos in America.
Yeah, like for them, they are actually part of the Methodist denomination, which is Protestant, but there's still this level of like, whenever she goes back to her home church, well, at least the one that she grew up in, all the people who knew her growing up, they wonder why she left, and there's like this expectation like that she was supposed to grow, like be grown and raised up in their church. But the rest of her friends now, most of them come here actually now. Surprisingly.
Well, if you think about just colonialism, you take whatever culture and whatever white or Western colonizing country that just kind of came in and brought their stuff and their ways of life and their religion. And a lot of that, as you can imagine, just kind of mixes in with their beliefs. And they get new images instead of, the idolatry they might have had in the past. Now it's a baby Jesus that they're praying to, or a Mama Mary, or, so it's like some of the, all I know really intimately is sort of the Filipino culture with Catholicism. But when you go, just, you can imagine if you were in that part of the world, and it's like convert or die. If you think about
interesting
being colonized by a powerful country that had guns,
Spain,
like what are you going to do? So there's a lot of that baked in there where it's not, I'm glad that there were missionaries, and not all things that are under the label of Christianity really understand or follow the Bible. But again, there's plenty of Bible-believing, personal relationship with the Lord Filipinos, but
Sure.
a lot of what my parents had to deal with was very different than you might minister to a Muslim country or minister to a Western country. But
Yeah.
I was gonna ask, like, did you ever experience that? Like someone, like people.
yeah, I couldn't invite
like,
my friends to church because I went to, like, for my elementary, I went to a private school, so a lot of my classmates would have come from business families or known families, and so they'd get in trouble if they came to church with me because, like, their aunt or their grandma would find out. And,
Right.
yeah.
Huh.
So the primary evangelical tool that my dad's used his entire ministry has been kind of in-home Bible studies or life groups, because you can invite anyone over for merienda, which is snack.
Snack.
Come over for merienda and let's talk about the Bible. Totally, neutral environment. It's not scary. It's not a church.
It's not an organization or
Right?
anything like that.
So they can keep going to mass. They can, and then over time, as they see, oh, this is a little bit different than just going to mass and actually reading the Bible. And then over time, they eventually, that's how he would reach people.
Yeah. I remember a month or two ago when you were preaching at your church and I came, and you guys had the missionary family from Thailand over. And he was talking about how he was doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Just like inviting people over and from their point of view, discipling them, but just like doing life and just being there, answering questions, that kind of thing. And it was just like so powerful to see, because I guess I didn't really fully grasp I say it as lightly, but like the hostility towards Protestantism. But like when you're there's already the you're a different culture.
Yeah.
You're different. You look, literally everything about you is different, but now it's easy to see it as you're attacking our way of life.
Yeah.
You got to be a little incognito with it.
And again, it's like totally intertwined with family relationships, culture. So it's not just like someone's belief system is the most core thing about them.
Yeah.
So if you come in and tell them that your belief system is wrong and everything your family and your ancestors ever believed is wrong, right?
That's going to go over smoothly every time.
So then did you understand this dynamic growing up, and then how did it impact your personal faith or walk with the Lord? Like knowing that, this Catholic influence came from a foreign country.
I didn't understand it.
Sure.
No. I mean, I was a kid.
Yeah.
I was just trying to get through school, and yeah, it's fascinating to think back on like the different levels of comprehension. But for me, I mean, I always struggled because I felt like I didn't have much of a testimony. Like a lot of grew up in the church people, and also was like, oh, they have like the story. My dad walked on the beach with me and told me about Jesus. Very exciting. What's fascinating to me is like you would remember when we did that whole testimony series.
Yeah.
Helping people share their testimonies has been like a theme in my life, from that event we did with college ministry to like I taught a testimony in a speaking class at my parents' church in the Philippines. I taught testimony class at Impact, like our church's discipleship school, and on the podcast that I host, I get people's testimonies. So I've been fascinated by it because, my translation of what testimony was as a kid, where I felt left out, was like the moment you come to know God. If you just think about the word comes from court of law, and it's like an eyewitness testimony that provides evidence of the existence of some reality, right? So if you're giving your testimony, it's supposed to prove something happened or didn't happen from your point of view. So your testimony again, yeah, it could be about you getting saved, but I have numerous testimonies about all sorts of things because I have things that happened in my life that proved the evidence of God's graciousness or his forgiveness or his compassion, or I grasped these different aspects of God. So for me, my faith journey has been interesting because although when I was younger, I was like, man, I never got that like night to day,
Out of the valley,
you
God
know,
met
like
me and-
death to life experience. But the reality is that when you're interacting with an infinite, all-knowing, all-powerful God, like the depth of the relationship has no end. So I've had experiences where my life has changed as much as someone might refer to their coming to know Jesus moment. That's happened again and then again and then again and then again. And there's always, you know, it's just a matter of time before I have another depth and revelation of what it means to be a Christian, and my whole life changes again. And so for me, I feel like it's sad that for a lot of my life, I thought my testimony was just the walk on the beach with my dad. Like, yeah, not very exciting, but I have all sorts of stories that are very exciting about ways God has taken hold of my life. And I think it's rooted into our culture that a lot of people see Christianity and faith as a decision that they made. But if you look at the Bible, it's take up your cross daily. It's a living sacrifice. It's an ongoing, any relationship. I can't just have decided to meet you in 2016 and then for the rest of my life be like, I know Jared. Right? Like that wouldn't work with any relationship. And yet so many people look at their faith as like, oh, I had this experience this one time at church and I went to the front and they prayed over me and now I'm a Christian.
Yeah.
It's like, no, like Christianity is like changes everything about you, your way of life, who you are. And so
How you think, what you prioritize.
yeah, and it's an ongoing, like, as I'm going to premarital counseling, the counselor talks about getting your PhD in your partner or your wife or your spouse, right? And I'm like, I like that. That's my job. I'm getting my PhD in Rachel. I'm not, you know, it's like even things I'm learning. And there's times that it's like, oh, this is, you know, like things will happen or there'll be conflict or disagreement. And most people who've been in a relationship, and I'm sure in your marriage, Ryan, it's like once you understand their point of view, you have compassion, empathy, and you understand where they're coming from. Most of the misunderstanding, the drama is like you don't actually understand. So I think that advice to get your PhD in your spouse is like, okay, I don't really get them right now, but if I actually studied to understand this person, that would solve a lot of my random marital conflicts.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, I'm sure there are things that you still don't understand and might never not fully understand, which I think I've heard
About God or my wife?
both.
Yes.
Both. I was going to connect it to our relationship with God too, because like, you know, like,
Absolutely.
yeah, like we will continue to put in the work to get to know our partners, and we must always do so, but we will never fully, completely, 100% know that person because we're not them. So
And they're also growing, changing, and just
Yeah,
gonna
Tim
be
Keller
different.
says that my wife married 5 different men and they are all me.
I'm literally reading that book right now.
Yeah.
And I just read that part.
But again, it's like some people approach their spirituality as if I decided one day to give vows and get married to this person.
and that's it.
And I don't have to do anything else the rest of my life. That's my wife. And again, it's like when you treat a marriage relationship like a real relationship and you look at problems as just things to overcome and things to learn about the person, then it actually gives a lot of hope and freedom and joy because you're not like, oh no, did I marry the wrong person? Did I make the wrong decision? No, it's like you have something to work through with this person. Anyone you marry, you're going to have that with. And so similarly with God, it's like, it's just an ongoing, growing relationship.
Yeah, and the way my brain works, it's like it takes like what we're talking about. We're just pretty much saying the difference between sanctification and justification. It's like you obviously make the decision, but then afterwards, it's the justification is yes, I'm saved by grace through faith. That's a one-time decision.
Yeah.
Sanctification is the process of looking more like that decision every day.
Yeah, I like that.
And it's funny you bring up the conflict and stuff like with people. I remember very vividly. So when we were going to the same church, he would be the guy always giving me a ride home. And it would never just be a ride home.
That little Prius, just like the engine stops and it gets really awkwardly silent, and then all of a sudden it starts up again.
Yes, yeah, the little hybrid.
The battery runs low.
Peter, we call
just
that
sitting in his parking lot.
That's funny.
Peter's party
building.
Prius, man.
Yeah.
That's many conversations have been had in that
R.I.P.
thing. I know that
R.I.P.
R.I.P.
Well, it got murdered, actually.
Yeah, catalytic converter twice in 1 month.
It got stolen out of it. Yeah, so wild.
Got it replaced.
I know
He
friends.
also moved out of alcohol.
Boom, boom.
Yeah. Those things are expensive,
Yeah,
surprisingly.
they're stupid. That happened. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Okay,
Anyways,
that's fine. But yeah, so I remember this one conversation we had, and we were talking about just that, just like conflict and stuff. And I brought up like, I'm a natural conflict avoider.
yeah,
And Peter was like, yeah, me too. But what you have to look at is the only way you really grow in any relationship is through conflict. Like if everything is good all the time, how do you get any depth? And I swear nothing stuck with me. Well, things have, but like that's one of the things that like has always stuck in my brain to the point where I'm like, it's not like I look for conflict because that's toxic. I don't really want that.
That just means you're sadistic. I'm kidding.
Yeah, I'm a masochist. Just looking for pain.
That's
or
the word. My
something.
bad.
Yeah.
Not sadistic.
One of those two. But it's like I don't shy away from it anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm like low key excited. I'm just like, yo, we got an opportunity here.
Let's hash this out.
bring it on.
Exactly. And one, I just want to say thanks
Yeah.
because that's been massive in like all of my
Think my first relationship in college.
You had to go through conflict to
I
get to that
avoided
point.
conflict, and I ruined that.
I really Oh man, but it's just so true. And those kind of conflicts we have with people, it's not so much conflict with God, but it's those just like not understandings, like seasons where it's like things don't like look one way or look how you want it, or you're just not understanding, and that's when you like kind of dig and plumb to the depths, or at least not the depths, but deeper into a relationship with God.
Yeah, I mean, the fascinating thing about God is if you think about like you and him, he never changes. Like he's always, like even if I'm talking to you and I'm like kind of doing this, it's like subconsciously I'm conveying, I'm not that interested in you, Jared.
Yeah.
Remember like in the lobby of The Rock, we'd always be like, there's so many people. And sometimes how do I end this conversation? I'm trying to go talk to that girl over there. And like there was always this, and there's a lot of, anyways, just think of God directed at you, fully
Full eye
inviting,
contact.
Arms open. And God's space, sin cannot exist in God's space. So for me to partake in sin, I have to leave this relationship to go access this thing that I want, that I think is going to provide for my needs, that it's not. And so this relationship, when people are like, God feels distance, all these things, it's like, one, we don't always feel, but two, it's like oftentimes he's never left. He hasn't changed at all. Senior Mango's cup. He's there.
Kairos smoothie chats.
But I've had to like go over here, and it's like I'm holding on to my sin, and the more I can't escape that. It's like I've reached into a hole and grabbed something.
Oh,
and
the
now
old
my
monkey
fist,
trap analogy.
My fist
Yeah.
can't reach out until I let go.
Oh.
And then another thing that
Real quick, just for people who don't know
yeah.
this, there's an old like story or like trap where like people in Africa, if you want to trap a monkey, you put like a treat in a hole. It grabs
It's like
the
a
treat.
termite mound.
Yeah.
Dig
and
a little hole in it.
It can reach in, but once it grabs the thing, it never opens its hand, so it's trapped. So that's like the analogy he's giving with like us and sin.
It won't let go.
It won't
and
let
you'll
go.
just go walk right up to the monkey and take it.
Yes.
And then the other thing I learned later is that sometimes there's like stuff buried deep within us, and it almost feels like a magnet. Imagine like if I had these like metal shards in me of sin. As I walk closer, it's like pushed out and like
it's
painfully being ripped out of me as I'm like slowly getting sanctified. That's the other experience I felt where it's like, oh, I thought, like you overcome this massive sin issue that ruled your life in your teens. And you're like, yes, victory. I'm past that.
That's it.
And then all of a sudden you're like, ow. And then you're, oh, wow. And then there's all this like different depths, because you look at just what Jesus did. He's like, oh, you've heard it said, murder, like he who murders his brother. But it's like, if you're angry at someone or commits adultery, look at a woman with lust. That's like, as you get closer and closer, there's like this layer underneath all of the sins that like gets pulled out, and you're like, oh, it's about my heart.
So even
though my actions look really nice and clean, ooh, here's another thing.
So even where like even if you're doing the right things for the wrong reasons, it's
There's plenty of people doing a lot of things for God,
for the air quotes
for themselves. It's like it looks good.
Did you ever watch The Legend of Korra or part of the Avatar series by chance, or no?
Yeah, the Avatar: The Last Airbender was the first series I saw start to finish. I was more of a movie than a series person.
Sure.
okay.
Oh, I loved
Yeah.
that. I didn't get through all of Legend of Korra.
Okay, yeah.
But man, I have some really fond memories.
Fair.
That was my first it was like 4 seasons too. Right?
Yeah, there is.
Yeah, Korra was 4, Avatar was 3.
Yeah. I bring it up because in season 4 of Korra, spoilers if you didn't watch it, but
I'll survive.
all right, there we go. She in the previous season, she'd been poisoned by liquid metal poison, and it's in season 4. She's like trying to overcome her like fear of being defeated, and like she's like being stripped down to like just like not an avatar. She's lost her whole mission, her identity.
And she was like this, brash, cocky, just
know-it-all kind of avatar.
broad shoulders back.
Yeah. But she finally finds Toph, like old Toph, and Toph like helps her bend the metal out herself.
Wow.
Because there's like a residual liquid metal poison in her that's supposedly preventing her from achieving the avatar state.
Wow.
So I thought of that when you mentioned the metal shrapnel, or the
Just getting
symbolic shrapnel, but versus us trying to do it ourselves, God's the one bending the metal out of us when it comes to sin. He's the one who's like, let me just take this out of you really quick, let me just make you more pure so that you can achieve the person that I made you to be.
Yeah.
And not even just achieve, but like to enter into this relationship that you were meant for, because you cannot be in my presence because I'm just like the sun.
Yeah.
Like if you don't have these impurities out of you, you're going to burn up.
Yeah.
So for your own good, because I want you to be in my presence, I'm going to take it out of you. So that's what I thought of when you had
Sanctification
that.
is so fascinating because it's happening to us. We're not doing it to ourselves.
Yeah. Why does that seem so simple but so profound at the same time?
Try to sanctify yourself. Go ahead.
No thanks. Hard pass.
That's the title right there. Try to sanctify yourself.
Yes.
But it's
That's
almost like
good.
one of the things that's funny that I've wrestled with. I don't know about you guys, but like a lot of times I get this guilt of like when something that I thought I'd overcome comes back. And I'm
Yeah, I
like,
hate that feeling.
And it's almost like I'm living under this false perception that somehow I'm gonna, I'm just gonna use enlightenment. Not that that's a Christian term, but like I'm gonna get to this certain level of understanding that no longer dealing with sin. But the reality is, even if that was possible, if you think about it, like when I overcome, what it tends to make me do is similar to why it says it's harder for a rich man to get in heaven than a camel to go through the eye of the needle, is because what do you need God for? You have all your needs met. So I find some of the, in my life, and I've witnessed in a lot of friends, where like they're in this personal growth journey and they are getting better and better and better. And eventually they realize they've built this identity on a false foundation of their own self ability. And then they crash and burn and die. Well, not die literally, but like their whole thing is,
If it's built on themselves, the
and
inevitable.
then they turn back to God and like, God, I can't do it on my own. And it's almost like you've got to learn to just have this normal, like in my weakness, then I am strong, because God is made perfect in my weakness. Like his power is made perfect in my weakness. And so, I'm all for personal development. I work as a coach, but
It has its place.
yeah, you can't, like you can worship that too, even through the lens of sanctifying yourself. And then you're actually, like, independence has no place in like a biblical understanding of your relationship with God. Like you are
It's almost the antithesis.
submitted to the authority of a king, right? Like I'm within your kingdom. I follow your rules. So the more I become independent or self-sufficient, the more I'm resisting reliance on you. Again, it's like the vine analogy. I'm trying to pull myself away from the vine to try to make it on my own. And then I can't have any life. It's like I've unplugged the power.
Yeah.
And I eventually fail. Come crawling back broken. And like, help me, God. So it's like, it's a challenge to try to figure out, how do I grow, sort of level up as a man, not at the cost of my reliance on God.
I've just seen that in my own life. Like even recently, because when I first got saved, shortly before I met you, one of the things was God was instilling in me just not kind of the basic habits of just being in prayer, being in my Bible, and that kind of thing. And I would time myself. I remember Pastor Miles was talking about he wanted us to pray 15 minutes a day. That's what I liked about the Rock and this church, is like there were tangible challenges, and I felt called to do that. And it's just like went from 15 minutes to half hour to like an hour. And I've had that for like years. And then recently I realized where it became that, where it was like, not quite I've met my quota, but it's like I'm doing these things, like I'm good because of that. Yeah. And God's had to take those away. And I'm like, no, but it's helped me. He's like, that was just to instill the habits. Like, you're used to in my presence now. Like, okay, I need you to like, don't worry about the timer. Don't worry about you prayed today, which, I mean, I still text some buddies of ours for accountability for that. But just like, now I just need you to sit in my presence until I speak, not for 15 minutes. Like, just be there. Like, that was good for a time. And I think it's kind of that same thing. It's like, that's when it becomes the defining trait. Yeah. It's not that that's bad. Yeah. But when it becomes over what is actually our identity, what actually is sanctifying us, is you're saying.
Yeah, like even with what you said, I'm good because. Yeah. I don't know what the scripture is in the Gospels, but someone calls good teacher. And Jesus is like, who's good?
Why do you call me good?
Why do you call me good? Right? Like even Jesus himself is like, why do you call me good? Right? Like that's Jesus. And it's like, I'm off over here trying to be like, look at me, I'm so good. And it's like, no, I mean, I'm good through Christ. I'm spotless through Christ. I'm no longer enslaved to sin, but I'm not on a quest to be good.
We already failed. If that's the quest we're already done for. Yeah. That much is true.
Everything that you're talking about, like this whole sanctification process and reliance and dependence on God. Can you pick out like a certain season of your life where you really felt God reveal that truth to you?
A testimony about dependence and reliance. Yeah, I mean, I think that one specifically, you earn it. through multiple failures, because you fail once and rely on God, and you can convince yourself a little bit later that I could do it this time, and then you
I'm
fail
that guy.
again.
I'm that hard-headed guy.
And then you rely on God, and then you go, you know what? I think this time I'm gonna make it. And so I just say that, Ryan, to be like,
Sure.
yeah. I mean, I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
A season, but I mean, I'm sure God can reveal anything to any. Like, you can work really hard to overcome something in your life, or God can just like go in, flip the switch. You're free of that forever, right? Like,
How easy it be.
I'm sure.
I've experienced both.
I'm sure there's people that grasp that reliance quicker than I do, but I know, like, in a few more years, I'm going to be trying to raise my family in my strength and then utterly fail. And then God's like, hey, you came back.
You came back.
But yeah, I think when I went to Impact, so it's now called the Rock School of Ministry, but Impact was a discipleship school that the Rock put on. It kind of birthed out of this Horizon School of Evangelism from Horizon Church. But Impact was the one I went to, and in that season of my life, I'd found out about it a month or two before I was leaving for the summer to do this job, so I couldn't like go to the school then. But I had this thing in my heart, like, hey, this is what I've been looking for. I wanted to grow deeper. A few years before, I'd been roommates with an atheist, and he knew more about the Bible than I did, and I felt really convicted. I was like, ooh, who am I? I mean, I've talked about my upbringing. It's like everything I did was surrounded by, it's like you meeting someone that doesn't play tennis, who knows more tennis than you do.
Yeah.
It's like your whole
Imagine
life
that.
has been tennis.
Yeah.
My whole life was this Christianity thing. And this person that is fully opposed is more knowledgeable. And I was like, oof. But anyways, I found this Impact, and I went, did my summer job. I came back, and I was kind of like, oh, now I can, I had the money I'd saved up from the summer. I had some residual income. A perfect season. But then, my brother's boss was trying to recruit me, and my other boss was trying to get me back. And then there were all these things of like, well, I can't take a year off of my career. Really spend a whole year just going to this discipleship school. But how about I'm a young man. I've got to develop my career. So then I ended up deciding to work with my brother. Totally failed at that. I think it's a great opportunity. There's a number of reasons why I failed at that. But yeah, it was very humbling because at that point in my life, not that this is accurate, but I sort of had the impression that I was a quitter. And I didn't really look at career because of the type of work I had done before that time. It was very intense and challenging and difficult. And it was almost like, don't quit was my only like driving work ethic force.
That was your only vision that you had, or
yeah.
purpose.
So when I got into this job, and it really wasn't what I thought I was signing up for, and there were a lot of things that were different. It's just like career as an adulthood is much more complicated than a summer internship that you're doing for 2 months. So I was taking the rules that worked in that and applied it to a career. All I'm trying to say is that 6 months in, I was, in my eyes, quitting, which to me made me a quitter. I was wrestling with all of that, so much stuff. Then I was joining this school that I'd been planning to join with no more money. My car had 240,000 miles, and I was starting at zero, right? And I always like to say, like, I'm not bragging about my responsibility. It's a personality trait. I take too much responsibility, and I stress myself out taking responsibility for things that aren't my responsibility. But that's one of my number one strengths, if you know StrengthsFinder. But because of that, I would have never allowed myself to rely on God unless I fell on my face in failure. So that was a season where I did what I thought was best and totally failed. And for the first time in my life, I had to actually rely on his provision. So I would have, I was working the info desk at the Rock, and some random lady who's a Filipina that connected with me would just bring me a check every so often. I'm like, another friend
Wow.
that was younger than me was paying me a couple $100 a month just to like help me go through my school. I was like,
Wow.
why are you, I was like, I would understand if I was a missionary, but there was money coming from all these different places. And even when we went to apply for a new apartment, and me and my roommate were moving into this house with a bunch of other guys, I was trying to like prove my income. And my roommate
Right.
was like looking over my shoulder. He's like, how do you pay rent? I was like, I don't know. It doesn't add up. and that was like, you hear these my parents were missionaries. My grandparents were missionaries. I hear these stories about like God providing, but I didn't believe that for me. So that was a season that I had real evidence for the first time in my life when I was doing everything. And even that, like, one interesting thing that I kind of am sad I didn't gain then. I think God gives us opportunities to learn something and trust him. And even if we say no or we refuse to, we get other chances. But
Thankfully.
thankfully.
Wow.
Yeah.
Tuition at the time was like $6,000. So on top of my rent and living in San Diego, I had to come up with that. And there was paid over time. So there were certain due dates. And when people didn't have enough for tuition, they couldn't come to class that day. And it was designed for them to go out and find some kind of job and go, figure out how to come up with the money. But in my pride, I was like, I'm just put on a credit card. I'll make this money back. I was driving Lyft and Uber. I could make some money. But what ended up happening often is there would be like, we'd go into class and I was like, faithful student, and then there's like 5 people missing. I was like, yeah, they couldn't come up with it. Really, I didn't have the money. I just put it on a credit card. And then 3 days later, they would make an announcement, hey, someone donated and paid everyone's tuitions for this payment, so everyone can come back to school. And I missed the blessing where if I had just trusted that God would provide,
Dang.
he provided. And
Well-
I ended that year with about $10,000 in debt that I was really ashamed of because I knew better. And it was all because there was these small little decisions over time thinking that I could do it all and I could provide. Even though he was already supernaturally providing for me.
Yeah.
There was another layer I could have discovered sooner if I hadn't been holding on to that, like, I'll figure it out. I'll just charge this and pay it later this month.
Dang. That's crazy. Thanks for sharing that. Like, I have a follow-up question, though. Like, during this experience, what was your role, if at all, in whether it was full-on trusting God or actually, like, trying to, like, ask people, like, to help you? Like, did you have a role in like God providing those funds for you when you were receiving it?
No, I was working. I was doing it my way. I mean, all the money I received was not because I asked for it.
Wow.
Yeah, it's not something I would have done. I wouldn't have got
After hearing that makes sense.
I wouldn't
Yeah.
have. I wouldn't have allowed myself to get in that situation. So
That's
again,
humbling.
if you're talking about,
Wow.
hey, how did you learn reliance? It's like I never would have if God hadn't have put me there.
Huh.
I would have burned the candle on both ends until the last. It's like that's the way I'm wired, and like I know there's so many people out there, their whole marriage is falling apart because they're carrying the weight of providing, and God's like, "Yo."
And as guys,
So I'm
especially. Yeah.
I'm glad that that happened then.
This is why I'm around this guy.
Yeah, noted.
There's always stuff like this.
Duly noted. Wow.
It's really, if you talk about your journey with Jesus, there's a lot of cool things. It's
Yeah.
like
There's so many good things.
Again, going back to that theme of like, I didn't have a cool testimony. It's like, just hang out with Jesus for a bit.
Just
Cool stuff
stay in the game a
happens.
little longer.
You know, it's
You'll
like,
have one at some point.
Yeah.
yeah, and it's like if you're feeling left out and you're like, man, it's almost like, I mean, I don't know if my pastor uses this term, pre-chewed food.
Mm-hmm.
I always imagined the March of the Penguins documentary where the mom goes out, goes fishing for months, and then comes back. It's like, but that's like podcasts, and it's like you don't know how to hunt for your own meat and process the word for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, go get your own testimony. Because again, the reality of faith is like, why would God provide something that you're providing for yourself? If you're never stepping out into a place that has risk or uncertainty, there's no reason. He's just going to let you keep doing it yourself.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Right? Like if you're right here at the ledge and you don't ever step off, how do you know? Like that classic Indiana Jones Invincible Bridge. Like, you don't know it's there until you step off, right? So, like, there's so many people that are just happily living their life on the edge, and God's like, trust me. And they've never actually, like, how do you trust someone? If I'm always providing for myself, if I always have a backup plan, do I really trust you? Mm-hmm. Or if I'm actually reliant on you, and if my life will fall apart without, or like, you're going to pick me up at the airport, and I'm texting you and reminding you and all these things, and I have an Uber just in case, like, I don't trust you.
Yeah. Yeah. There has to be some risk involved, like you said.
It's like the scientific method of faith.
Huh.
If you study science. If you study science, right, it's just like it's observed. Mm-hmm. I ran this experiment. Oh, look, gravity. Let's try that again. Let's measure it. So again, that's how do you, I don't have any faith. It's like, well, have you ever
Tried.
I mean, you don't really do experiments or throw fleeces on the ground and pray for them to get wet or dry. Like
The Gideon method.
you don't need all that stuff. It's just like trust him.
I think life is going to provide
tomorrow. Yeah.
Life provides plenty of examples to trust him. That's like you don't there's no shortage of opportunities to trust God and that he will do what he says. That's why he's there, because it's like without God, like we can't get through life. Let alone after that.
It's almost like you have the coupon in your pocket, but you never redeem it. You know, like you have the relationship with the Lord, and you've never actually accessed what that means. You claim to know him, but do you ever... It's not about rewards and blessings and prosperity gospel. It's literally like to survive. I don't know what I would do if I didn't know the Lord. I don't know how people make it. Life's hard.
Here's a hot take. You know, someone listening to this who might not know the Lord yet might ask, so then do we not have a 401k? Do we not have a retirement plan or a backup plan for that matter? Like, do we not have a plan B at all or plan C? I feel like even, I don't know if this is a proverb or not, but I feel like Proverbs would have some wisdom, like plan.
Proverbs is super practical. That.
Like plan at least something.
Yeah. Like there is that. Yeah. I think if you want to talk about Proverbs, like that's probably that is like the book you go to for like the practical advice, practical wisdom. And it's not like everything else in the Bible is super spiritual and mystical or anything, but it's like it talks about just having an inheritance for your kids, like planning ahead.
Yeah,
like that's what those metaphors are kind of about.
Yeah.
You ever heard the joke about the guy that was out lost at sea and a boat came by?
Yeah.
And he said, "No, God's gonna save me." and then he gets to heaven, and he's like, "God, you didn't save me." He's like, "I sent you 3 boats."
Yes. It's pretty much comparing how
go to the doctor, pray, and go to the doctor.
God's gonna heal me. Okay,
There's no shame on the Lord that you went to the doctor. Like, take the medicine.
I think that's the humbling part about it is like, what if the provision, what if the God's hand doesn't look like how we envision?
Yeah, even when I'm praying for poor Ryan, he has something in his life. What if God wants to use me to fill that? Right? Like we imagine God's going to do it a certain way.
Yeah.
And we miss that he answered the prayer. It just didn't look the way we wanted to.
Right.
But if someone's listening to this doesn't believe God and it's like, well, do I not save? I wrestle with that a lot because I coach people that are really successful in business. I've had clients that are ready to retire, financial advisors, make tons of money, make over $500,000 a year, and they have plenty of assets. And they're still terrified to retire. They don't feel like they have enough, and that's the reality. That's why the love of money is the root of all evil. It's not that money is bad, but if that's the answer, there's no security in money. Who knows? The next election, everyone gets it. Like, you just watch the news for the last few months, and you could start questioning maybe English isn't going to be the main language in the world anymore, or the dollar is going to die.
Never imagined that.
Again, these are things that have been clickbaity titles. And if your security is in this, it doesn't matter how much you have. But I know both my grandparents were missionaries on either side. And my dad's parents were much more like, they owned real estate property in the States and rented it out and had all that. My mom's parents, not that they weren't, again, they weren't reckless at all, but in terms of like planning, they didn't really, they were missionaries. And even as missionaries, you're relying on other people. And so they never needed anything. Like, literally, I can look at these people that worked really hard for most of their life, and they have more than most people would ever need, and they still need a lot.
Right.
Through their lens, their perspective on life. I'm not ready to stop working because I am anxious that I don't have enough. And my parents, or my mom's parents, never once even thought about that. And their entire lives had everything they need.
That is some radical faith.
Right? Like,
wow.
Again, it's like, what life would you rather? It's like, I'd rather not stress out. And again, does it mean I should never invest or should ever have a 401k? No, but again, it's like, it's kind of nuanced and it's personal to you, but it's like, yeah, if you have, there's wisdom to it. But if that's your source of security, it's never going to be enough. If you're a missionary and you never even have the opportunity to put anything in a 401k, you could still go crazy and think, what am I doing? Maybe I should leave the mission field and get a real job so that I can retire someday. They retired just fine. They provided for their kids. They never were in need.
As I was reading, I've been going through 1 Thessalonians last few days. And yesterday I was just reading and rereading the first chapter. And, it's like Paul's normal intro letter and like just greetings. And in verse 2, he says, "We give thanks to God always for all of you, making mention of you in our prayers, constantly bearing in mind your work of faith and labor of love and steadfastness of hope in our Lord Jesus Christ and the presence of God our Father." And it was one of those things where it's like, okay, yeah, I just kind of gloss over it and read it. I was like, there's something more there. And it was in verse 3 where he says, constantly bearing in mind. In this time, like, this is open season for Christians. And they're choosing to think about how their work is paying off. Not just how their work is paying off, but how there's other people believing. There's other people who are living out the gospel, and that's what they're choosing to pray on. They're choosing to see God being faithful. And so it's kind of a two-part thing. When we talk about, you said you have clients who have plenty and are still afraid to retire. It's, again, my mind kind of boils things down to simple things. Like
sometimes they're afraid to even not work the weekend.
Dang. Wow. That's just kind of what fear does when your mind just goes rampant. And I think when I read this, I was thinking on when you were talking, because like I think Paul and them knew that, because they had all the circumstances, plenty more circumstances than they need to be in a fearful mindset.
Nothing new under the sun.
Nothing under the sun. Exactly. So part of it is just what we choose to think on, and what do we constantly marinate on. Like everything else is trying to grab our attention. The news is trying to grab our attention. All these things in news titles is mainly what might possibly happen down the road that's going to impact you in a tragic or horrific way. So it's like, what are we going to choose to think on?
Yeah.
And then to the, why should we save and that kind of thing, it's more so it's like, it's not that that's bad, but allow your plans to be interruptible. That's what I usually see it as. It's like, okay, yeah, like have your plan and stuff. It's all, we always hear that thing. It's like you make your plans and God laughs. Like that's how you
make God laugh.
Yeah, it's more of a a hyperbole to get a point across. It's just like, don't be so married to it to where that's the identity. That's the thing that's saving you. It's like, make those plans. Just be
prudent.
prudent.
Lord directs your steps.
Exactly. It's
That's
like when
right.
it's like, that's good, but this will be better.
This morning, or even like I was like driving here, the devotional of the day that on the app I'm listening to, it's going through Luke, and it was the second part of Mary's prayer of her praising God for this, for Gabriel giving her the news that she's gonna bear Jesus. Cool. And the second half of it is, he has filled the hungry with good things, but has sent the rich away empty. And I was reflecting on it, and I was curious why this version said, like, he has filled the hungry with good things. It doesn't even say good food. Like, what does it mean? Like, what does it mean to be hungry in this context? Hungry for what? Is it food? Is it for something deeper than just mere food? And I think you kind of answered that as you were talking. Like, when you're hungry for something else, God will feed you with that something else that is greater than just mere physical food. And then he'll send the rich away empty, because as you're just literally saying, when we rely so much on those things that give us stability, and we think those things give us a foundation, though that foundation is not strong enough to hold us, because they were never meant to hold us in that way. Only Jesus has the strength to hold us in a way that is not just meant for this life here on earth, but is meant for our life in heaven.
Yeah.
Good things here can't become our ultimate things.
It's like his power is greater than our circumstances, because I can have a house and never feel at home. I can be married and be completely lonely. I could be completely alone and feel loved and accepted, right? Like, the stuff doesn't make sense. And when you actually get into the gospel, that's the power, when you meet people that have nothing, and they're the most grateful people you've ever met. And the people that have everything and are anxious and depressed and lost and want all. It's like our desires are infinite. So it's just like, that's the power of the gospel. It's like, I think I need this thing. God's going to provide what I actually need. The heart peace, without necessarily, he could give me the circumstance. He might not.
What you said about just your missionary grandparents, and technically your parents also, living that kind of like radical lifestyle and having that heart posture of just full on trust, that's comforting to me, because my wife and I, we are in process. We had our first meeting with our pastors about going to Japan as long-term missionaries. I don't know if he's told you about it, but we're preparing for that journey in the next 2 or 3 years ourselves. We kind of did like a brief scouting trip. We met with because our missions director lives in Japan right now. Cool. And we met up with some other missionary families there. And I think as we talk with our pastors and we talk about like what fundraising looks like how our church is going to partner with us to do that, fundraising is always, I feel like, it feels like it can be like the biggest hurdle to jump over. But as you're talking, that kind of gives me it encourages me and it comforts me, knowing that this is the move. for my wife and I, this is what God is going to have us do, and God will provide for us. If it's his idea, he will fund his ideas.
I have a testimony on it if you want. It's probably, I don't have time to do too many other topics, but if you want the fundraising testimony, we can close on that if you like.
Yeah.
Please.
Cool. Well, when I was raising support to go out to the Philippines and work with my parents, there were a couple things. Remember, I got into debt. So I was like, I need to make my own money so I could pay my debt. Right? Like I was wrestling, and I remember the guy discipling me was like, your money. And that's all he said.
Your
I was like, oh.
money.
But what really changed it for me, my sister, she's like, oh, what's your donation link? And sent it to her. And she was in college at the time. I checked later. She gave me like $800. And I was like, whoa, it's okay. Like,
what are you doing?
Yeah. And she had donated, or she had tithed her entire summer, right? Not what she made, but she'd tithed 10%. And this was like in March. But I asked her, and she was like, well, thank you for, God's been convicting me all year to give a tithe from my summer. And I'm just excited I get to give to something I believe in. And I recognized that, like, it was never about me. God was doing something in my sister's heart. I was just purely the opportunity for her to have her own relationship with the Lord grown. And then God was meeting my need through something he was doing in her. And then on top of that, a scripture that really stuck out to me, I think it's Philippians 4:17. But the Philippian church is one of the few churches that actually gave financially to Paul because he was a tent maker. He provided for himself. And I'm not going to quote it word for word, but it says something of like, not that I desired the gift, but the credit that would be added unto your account. And as I meditated on that, I realized that like this partnership happens in missions, where if I'm going to be a missionary and go full-time overseas, literally for visa purposes, I cannot get paid over there. It's impossible, at least for me in the Philippines. It's impossible for me to enter that country without all of my income coming from overseas. And for a family here with 3 kids, it's impossible for them to have a meaningful impact in the Philippines. You know, they could go for a 2-week trip, but that's not the same.
Yeah.
So the only way that impact's possible is these 2 people working together. So if you think about it, the fruit of that work and that labor, who gets the credit? Is it the person that goes or the person that sent them?
Right.
It's impossible without either. So if I'm sending, am I not a part of that good work in kingdom building in a similar way? So again, all I'm trying to say in that is when I'm talking to people about fundraising, I don't need your money. God will provide me either way. He owns a cattle on 1,000 hills. I'm fine. Again, if this is the attitude you take with your wife, Ryan, anytime you sit down with anybody to ask about fundraising, remove the need. All you're saying is like, yo, Jared, this is what I'm doing. Do you want to be a part of that? It's an invitation for him, not that you have any need. You're giving him a gift because he's getting to get involved in the mission that you're being called to. So again, if someone doesn't care about Japan or doesn't care about, like every missionary has something they're called to, church planting, orphanage, whatever it is. And you're going to find people that they really care about that. And you're giving them the gift to be a part of God's kingdom in the area that they are feeling called to be a part of. They don't have the ability. They physically cannot meet the need that their heart is breaking for. And God's providing a way for you to go meet that need and a way for them to be a part of meeting that need. So again, it shifts the whole paradigm. You're like, I'm going to Jared to take him to coffee and ask him for money. But really what I'm doing is I'm going to Jared and saying, yo, check out this cool thing God's about to do in Japan. Do you want to be a part of that? You could literally just pray for me and be part of it.
Yeah.
Right? And like, I don't need your money. God's going to provide a way through somebody. But if you want to be a part of that, he's not going to involve you in his work if you're not involved in his work.
That's his will for.
So the only way Jared can be involved in that is if he somehow supports. And again, if money is just simply a unit of trade in exchange for my time and energy, right? It's like he has given time and energy, traded it for money, given it to you, and it goes to Japan and does this work. So he's trading his time and energy to impact people in Japan. He just physically can't go.
By transitive property. That is a good way to frame it.
Yeah, who gets credit?
Completely,
man?
yeah.
Like, I don't know. It's
God.
not like... Yeah, again.
God gets the
I
will
Make
there.
it like that so we can't take credit.
I don't really think like I'm really going to have a nice mansion in heaven because I was a missionary. You know, it's like that's... I don't think his economy works like that. But again, if we're trying to lay up treasures in heaven and we're trying to do kingdom-oriented things, there's a vast difference between you doing that and you going to Starbucks every day. Or you know, going to an extra few movies. You know, it's not much. You get 100 people giving minimal amounts.
Yeah.
You get 200 people giving very Netflix subscriptions.
Yeah.
And you can go change the world, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's not
there.
hard.
Numbers add up quick.
So anyways,
So true.
it'll be a fun journey.
It'll
You
be a
can't
journey.
borrow my faith. Just go test it yourself. Go have some fun.
Step out in the water there. Wow. Thank you for that.
Bruh.
Actually, that's some encouragement right there for sure.
Ah,
Wow.
This has been a fun talk.
always.
Always. No, it literally is always.
Let's talk about Jesus.
Let's talk about Jesus. Let's talk about what he's doing. Let's talk about how big he is and how stubborn we are sometimes, you know?
Yes, we are.
Yeah, again, Jared, it's like Marvel Cinematic Universe. That thing was exciting because it was 23 movies all into one climactic moment. And we think we live these sad, pathetic lives. And it's like, well, what story are you part of? I'm a part of the story from the beginning of creation. That God's
My
trying
guy.
to redeem mankind. I'm not the main character. I'm just one of those guys in Wakanda charging at the...
One of the guys, one of the extras.
You know, I got killed off halfway through and Wanda threw something and it killed me. But I'm in that story, you know? I'm not just...
You're in the end credit scene. You're listed.
Yeah. somewhere in there.
I'm there, right? Like, I'm a part of that story. Or you can just choose to try to make a living. Mm-hmm. That's pretty boring.
It's so funny because I'm like, I have a friend and she doesn't understand like why I like movies so much, and it's literally because of that. Because I see you talk about 23 movies, like, you know, it's just like the Bible. It's 66 different movies with the same theme all coming together, and that's literally what it is. And I see all these people just like any of you people you see in the Old Testament, just like people trying to be like Jesus, trying to fill out that portrait of who the Messiah is to come, but they all have their failures and they all interact, and it's just like, this is the biblical story, people. Just people are a lot stronger. Thank you so much for your time, Peter.
Truly, this was truly
This is encouraging.
a pleasure. Yeah,
This is
very
mad encouraging. Oh man, I hope it was for you guys too. Thank you so much for listening.
Truly.
Truly.
We hope it encouraged you guys in some way too, to also have that same faith that Peter has learned and the people in his life have learned too.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And before we end, I want to say congrats on your engagement, dude. You know,
congrats!
let's go. I'm excited for
If
you.
I knew it was going to be this good in my 20s, I would have had an easier time waiting. You know, it's like they tell you, oh, you just wait. And I was like, no, I need this yesterday.
Yes,
And now I'm here and I'm like, huh, he did it.
He did.
he did it.
He actually did the thing.
Won't he do it?
That's the thing that gives me hope now.
Just chill, man.
Just chill.
If you try to find it your own way, you'll just make it worse. But In
That's
due
a whole
time.
nother podcast. Jeez. Do we need another episode for that? Shoot.
Truly.
We gotta flesh that out more. But until next time.
Thank you guys for being here. We will see you on the next one.
Later.
Peace.